Quick disclaimer before we begin, all the following is my opinion and I've spoken with other content creators in the scene to produce all of the following information, some of which contributed to a later section in the video. Although I have worked in the video production area previously, I am not an expert, and if any of the info I provide isn't correct, please contact me and I will correct it. Welcome to our video discussing camera setups, best action cams, other creator setups and my setup. Up on the screen now is various timestamps to sections of the video. There is a lot of information in the video, so please do not hesitate to reach out if you want to discuss further or additional clarification. Now, with the holiday season and Black Friday around the corner, the opportunity for some great savings and the traditional "what do you want for Christmas" question kind of floating around the household, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss the best filming equipment for content creators in the Gelblasting world specifically. Last year I managed to save $200 on each of my action cams in the holiday season, so keep an eye out if you're looking to snag a bargain in the coming weeks. So the first thing I want to discuss is when is a good time to start content creating for Gelblasting. I know there are a lot of people out there kind of sitting on the fence and not wanting to take the plunge into the content creator world. It can be very daunting for some, and you might want to think waiting until the sport is bigger and has a decent following would be better to kick things off. I personally would say now is actually a really great time. With moving into 2021 and being able to actually play again, the sport is going to grow, and fingers crossed the situation in the other states improves so we can all get back to the sport we love. Now is actually a really great time to test out your style and find your footing in the content creator world before 2021 drops. We have had a lot of feedback and already made subtle changes to the way we create our videos. Also, despite what you might hear, other content creators are more than happy to help you get set up and even collaborate. While making this video, I contacted a lot of content creators and not even one turned down the opportunity to help. There is always this stigma around the contest of content creation, where we're all in it just for ourselves. The truth is, as long as people are promoting the sport and getting involved, the more content we can create as a sport, the better for us all. Now, moving on to a pretty significant key piece to the choice of what action camera you should get, 4K or not to 4K, and is 4K worth it? It's honestly a tricky question because I don't think it is, but I kind of do think it is. Just let me explain. So for us, the main disadvantages of 4K are file size and storage. So you might not really want to store footage after you use it, but I do. And even transferring off cards takes a long time. A quick example, a full day of 2K footage across all 4 of our cams is about 500 gigabytes worth of footage, which is a lot for me to store, but I still store it. SD card requirements, so these have gotten a lot cheaper over the years, but a high quality, fast speed cards are still pricey, and you really do need those for higher resolutions and higher FPS recording. Computing power. If you're going to do a fair amount of editing and working especially with 4K footage, you'll need something a little better than your high school laptop you're given. Heat. This is a big one for us, especially in summer. I've had cameras turn off due to heat twice now, and I haven't even played in the warmer days yet. The overheating is directly related to transfer speeds off the camera to the SD cards, so the higher the resolution and the higher the FPS, the more likely things are to get warm and switch off. This is more of an issue for outdoor players playing in direct sunlight. However, I imagine moving into summer and those really warm days, it's going to be an issue for indoor as well. And lastly, 99% of your audience isn't going to be watching in 4K. So phones are so small that visual differences between 1080p, 2K and 4K isn't as noticeable as a computer monitor, let alone TV. So those watching on computer screens are unlikely to have 4K monitors, even though I know a few of you nerds do. Now, the benefits of crisp footage, ability to zoom and downscale are all valid benefits. However, unless you're experienced with editing or have the time to actually gain the most out of 4K, it's pretty much wasted. Personally, I could use 4K to up the production quality, but with 4 cameras at each game, the amount of time just to cut and edit that footage is too much. If you're coming from a videographer background, go for it, as you would more than likely already have the experience and the tech to support yourself. The argument for using 4K footage just so you can stabilize it in post is another one I hear a fair amount, which is true, you can stabilize it in post, but I never recommend you stabilize in post because you can lose up to 40% of the entire frame to post-processing, which might be enough to ruin the entire shot. So really it's a gamble with post-stabilization, and entirely it's up to you. Now, with all of that said, you might assume that I hate any camera which can record in 4K. That's actually not true. In fact, I recommend the Osmos Action or the last 3 GoPro models, so the 7, the 8 and the 9. These are all 4K or more action cams which are packed with features and a decent amount of options at lower resolutions. A lot of people also recommend the GoPro Session 5. If you like the size and don't mind the slight hit to overall stabilization quality, as it doesn't have the latest stabilization tech, go for it. They're great for the size. Also, remember that there are still successful content creators in the airsoft world using GoPro 3s and 4s. So really, it just depends on what you want out of your footage. Now for my recommendation on setups for your playstyle. If you're a speedy boy playing as fast as you can, running around like a headless chicken, getting as much content jam-packed into a day as possible, I wouldn't worry at all about 4K or even 2K unless you're running at 2K 60. Run with a good quality 1080p camera which supports 120 FPS. Smoother footage always looks better than a good picture at low FPS, especially if you're moving around a lot in low light. For a speedy boy, high FPS and the best stabilization you can find will be your best friend. People who like action-packed footage don't mind if it's 1080p, as long as it's smooth and you can see what's going on. The top complaints I see on footage of the speedy boys is the camera is bouncing around too much or the footage is too unstable. If I was going to run a setup for Speed QB or constant indoor action, I'd run a head cam with either an Osmos, GoPro 7, 8 or 9, with another camera on the blaster looking back at me, although it might get in the way depending on the camera. You could run a scope cam with a 16mm lens, but even that might be too long for indoor play. Having done some testing with my 16mm scope cam, it's still too zoomed in for me. That's just my personal preference though, and depends on your playstyle. As I know, there are some players who even when playing indoors will sit further back on the field. Outdoor players, my ideal setup would be a head cam with either Osmos, GoPros, a blaster cam looking back at myself and a scope cam. Outdoors is a great opportunity for higher resolutions and reasonable FPS, so 30 to 60 completely fine. However, you got to be careful with overheating cameras outdoors. Everyone has to be aware of it, but with being in direct sunlight, things can get warm quick, especially when filming in 4K or 2K 60. I personally have experienced cams shut down due to heat, and we haven't even hit those crazy summer temps yet. So you really need to base your purchase on what you want to do and your budget. There is no point in spending $500 on an action cam which has 5K if you plan to only film in 1080p 60 FPS, unless you believe the features can justify the price. There is other options on the market much cheaper which will give you the same results. You also don't need a camera jam-packed with features if you ain't going to use them. If you're a slow passive player or even a sniper, you don't really need the best stabilization in the game. I recommend stabilization and a good amount of resolution / FPS options be the thing you look for the most in any action camera. I also recommend you watch some other content creators out there, see if you like what they do, and simply ask like what camera they run and what settings they use. I don't speak for everyone, but I'm sure we would all be happy to provide further information for those looking. There is no 100% perfect camera for everyone, it's all situational, and if you want my opinion on your situation and budget, or you want to further discuss anything I've said so far, I'm more than happy to speak with you further about it. Simply contact me via Discord or on our Facebook page, both of which are linked in the description below. So I quickly want to mention the pros and the cons of some of the popular options out there, and we'll just jump straight into it. So the Osmos Action, I run 2 of these. You'll see it later in the video, and I'll show you how my setup is. They're part of the Digi world, so they work the same with the app. Everything kind of is flawless. If you've used the drones and that before, it's great. Front-facing display, very helpful, especially when I'm using someone else's camera on their head. Video quality, stabilization matches the GoPro 7 Black, which is awesome. It has screw-on filters. Not many people use those. I do, but not many people do. It's all right. Large clear back screen, which is awesome. No GPS. Battery life could definitely be better. No stabilization in HDR mode, and there's not as many mounting options as the GoPro, which you will see later on in the video. Next we have this Session, or the GoPro Session 5. These are nice and small, takes up no space at all. It's really great for actually mounting on the blaster. Cheap secondhand, and they're very straightforward with operation. You just press the button, you're good to go. Not too much fiddling around with settings and stuff. The batteries are hardwired into the camera, and you can't take them out, which is a little bit annoying. There's no back screen, so you got to use the app or just wing it. It's an older version of stabilization, so it can't match, the 7, the 8, or the 9. There's no 1080p 120, which is a bit of a shame, and aggressive wind reduction, so it's a big hit to audio quality, especially when you're outside. The GoPro 7 Black, so it has great stabilization, easy to use touchscreen UI, huge range of mounts and accessories, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. There's no real battery improvement over previous models, which is a shame, especially if you're not using power banks, and it's known to get actually pretty warm with 4K recording. So next up is the GoPro 8 Black, improved image stabilization over the 7, simple post-production via the app, automated horizon leveling, has great LCD quality and control. It's a little less rugged than previous models, which is a shame. It's known to get hot when recording, that's across all resolutions. Battery life is still okay, and the LCD screen is a little on the smaller side with this one. Now we have the current flagship, the GoPro 9 Black, introduction of front-facing screen, which is really helpful. Improved battery life, which is finally great to see. It does do 5K video if that's what you want to do. Known to hold a good connection to your phone with using the app and everything. Has a larger rear display, which is great. It's the actual size of the camera. It's larger than previous models, so there's less accessory options there. The touchscreen can be a little unresponsive. I've actually noticed this when using them. Batteries are not backwards compatible, so you can't use your old batteries, which is a shame. And it's heavier than previous models, so if you're used to the smaller ones on your head, you put this thing on, it's a bit more heavy, you'll notice it. So I reached out to a few content creators to ask them, what kind of hardware they use, to give you some idea. So really appreciate the feedback, guys. Thanks. First up, we got Kamikaze. He runs a GoPro Hero 8 with a RunCam brain exploder kit. If you want to know what brain exploder is, they make a lot of aftermarket mounting options for your helmets, your blasters, your boonies, stuff like that. Just simply Google brain exploder and it'll come up. That makes some awesome stuff. Now for his studio recording, so when he does his reviews and that, he runs with a Canon 200D and also a Rode Video Mic Pro shotgun mic. Alright, now up next is Dog. So he runs 2 GoPro Hero Session 5s, so one on his head and one on his blaster. He also runs with a RunCam 2 with a 16mm lens, so that's your smallest lens on the RunCam. And lastly, he just wanted to mention that he records in 1080p 60 FPS, so perfect example right there of, you don't need the biggest, most expensive cameras to get the best quality footage. Next up is Aussie Dodo. So he runs with the GoPro Hero 7 Black and a RunCam 2, and he also mentioned that he rocks the mobile for the sideline footage. Another great example of, you don't need the most expensive hardware in the game just to make good quality footage. Lastly, Bradley Phillips. So he uses a DSLR for his reviews. So any DSLR is going to do pretty good in this kind of arena. He runs a GoPro Hero 9 for his head cam, and he runs a Scope Cam 4K. He also runs a GoPro Hero Session 5 just for reverse back self footage off his blaster. And yeah, that's the list. So as you can see, mainly GoPros here, unfortunately no digis, but this is the kind of stuff you want to be looking out for, and I appreciate all the support, guys. Thanks.